Alrighty, so today we're going to talk about Orlando City in the season preview. And after last season, where Orlando City got record amount of point in the regular season in franchise history, the problem for them is that they still can't get past the dreaded second round, and they're looking to try to do that this season. Although, unfortunately, this offseason they did lose some key pieces that I'll talk about. But in terms of last season, as I said, it was a record breaking season where they finished with an 18-9-7 record and finished with 63 points. Their last playoff appearance, well, it was last year. Their last playoff round wins was also last year when they beat Nashville in the first round, but unfortunately that lost to the eventual MLS Cup champion, that is the Columbus Crew, 2-0 after extra time. And then, of course, heading into their 10th season, they're looking to try to chase their first ever MLS Cup, as they have never won MLS Cup heading into their 10th season. Now, looking at some of the transfers, so obviously they made Ivan Angulo a permanent signing this offseason, but the biggest headline offseason signing for Orlando City has to be Nico Ladero heading to Orlando. And I think this is going to be the same situation I'll say about Damir Kralj when I do the season preview of the Vancouver Whitecaps, which, by the way, I actually just did that now. Damn it, that was the first one I did. I almost with the way that I'm basically trying to do as much video and doing a lot of season preview in a row. I almost forgot that I've already did the Whitecaps season preview. But anyway, I think as I might have said in that season preview of the Whitecaps, it is going to be weird seeing Nico Ladero wearing the purple instead of the Wraith green, because that's been where he's been for the past decades or so, and that's where he made his name. And I'm pretty sure Seattle fans, I don't know if Orlando City are playing Seattle this year. If that's the case, man, that's going to be interesting seeing Nico Ladero facing against his former team, especially if this is going to be in Seattle. I think there's going to be a huge ovation if that, of course, is the case. But yeah, it's going to be very strange seeing him wearing an Orlando jersey instead of a Seattle jersey. But other than that, they also got Rion Torrey from the draft, and then they also made a permanent signing of Walter Cartagena. And that I also didn't put it here, but judging by what I mentioned in the news of the week episode, it looks like they're also signing another center back as well. I forgot exactly what the name is, but yeah, they're looking to trying to get another center back, and that in an upcoming day that will be potentially made a permanent signing to potentially replace the center back that they lost this offseason. And this is where we get to some of the key pieces that they lost this offseason. They lost Antonio Carlos this offseason. He went back to Brazil, but they also lost one of their heart and soul in Mauricio Pereira. Now, obviously, there's going to be a debate whether or not if that was the right idea that they decided to let go of Mauricio Pereira. I mean, some will say that it is the right choice, considering he is in his 30s, and that I think he maybe have 1 or 2 year left in service, and especially with him carrying that deep key tag, you don't usually want to keep giving players in their DPs as they head into the 30s, especially if you're a number 10. But that being said, there are some people that said that they should have just kept him if they haven't really found a replacement for him. And no, Nico Ladero is not a replacement for Maurizio Pereira. I'll be surprised if that is the case, because if you decided to use Ladero as a replacement for Pereira, don't get me wrong, Ladero is great. I mean, he's been incredible, especially during his time with Seattle, and is going to go down as one of the best number 10 to ever play in this league. But Ladero has definitely dropped in terms of the numbers that he has as he gets older, and that if you decided to replace Ladero with Pereira, I mean, you might as well just keep Maurizio Pereira in the first place. But nope, they decided to let him go. They also let go of Gaston Gonzalez, although I think he's only left this team on a loan. And then they also lost Lucas Petracio, Junior Urso, Ferdo Rivera, and then this is where we get to talk about the Duncan McGuire situation. So, if you haven't watched my News of the Week episode, I've already mentioned the Duncan McGuire transfer saga involving Orlando and Blackburn, of how, on one day it says that it looks like it's on, and then on the other it says it's not on. And now today, when I woke up and look at the news in terms of the situation, they said it's on again. So yeah, it just feels like it's kind of like a back and forth, and this is kind of like a situation where it's like conflicting sources. I mean, one source obviously is well known, that is Tom Boger reporting yesterday that the deal is off, but then today there was other sources that said that it is now back on, and there's even multiple news network have said that this deal is now back on as well. So yeah, it is very interesting to see the situation involving Duncan McGuire, and this is also where if you're Orlando City, I mean that's another big piece that they lost this offseason. I mean with the breakout season that Duncan McGuire has, especially in the latter part of the season where he was just scoring every single game. I mean that was probably a shade of Daryl DK that we saw last year, especially in the second half of the season that Duncan McGuire has had. And now it feels like he's following the same footstep as Dale DK, going to the championship. And this is also where I've said that this is a very interesting and kind of almost a debatable move that Orlando City fans will have within themselves. That is this the right choice for them to let go of him, especially with the amount that they let go of, only $4 million. I think there's also some sell on fees on top of it. But still, that just feels like it's very low, and they probably could have got more if they keep him for another season. But then again, if you're Duncan McGuire and you have a chance to play in Europe, and that if you play in Europe and you do well, you get a chance to crack into the national team, just like what we saw with Daryl DK a couple years ago. Why not? Why not do it now instead of waiting another season? And there's no guarantee that of course is going that move is going to material, because if he has a regression of a season, and this is where the other argument has to be of why they should let go of Duncan McGuire. That is that if you have a regression, then the value is not going to be as much as what we see right now. So it's a very peculiar situation, and that again, it'll be interesting to see when it does make official. I'm pretty sure Orlando City is going to have to look for a backup option, because again, that's a huge piece. I think between this and Antonio Carlos, probably the Duncan McGuire one is even bigger loss. And this is no disrespect to Antonio Carlos; he means a lot to that center back position. But losing Duncan McGuire this season, that really drops the ceiling in terms of this Orlando City team, especially on the attacking end. So looking at the preseason schedule, so far they already played one preseason game. They drew 1-1 against Flamengo. Then they play against a new USL Championship expansion side, Rhode Island FC, and all the remaining game is going to be closed door. The only game that's not closed door was against Flamengo, and I actually did watch a little bit of that game because Orlando City did broadcast that game on their TV. And let's just say, yeah, there was a lot of Flamengo fans in attendance. I almost didn't realize that this was a home game for Orlando City if they weren't playing at Exploria Stadium, or now called Interdaco Stadium. But yeah, there was a lot of Flamengo game fans in the stands, and rightfully so, because Orlando is home to a huge Brazilian population. Then they of course play New England behind closed door on the 10th. Then they play against the Houston Dynamo on the 14th, and then they finish their preseason schedule on the 17th, playing against the Colorado Rapids. Now in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, I know a lot of Orlando fans are looking forward to playing against Tigres, but remember, their first round matchup is not against Tigres; it's against Calvary of the Canadian Premier League. And if there's anything you want to know about Calvary, is that you can't underestimate them, because I'm pretty sure the Vancouver Whitecaps didn't get that memo a couple years ago, and that they got upset by Calvary in the Canadian Championship. So Orlando, as much as I know they're looking to trying to get their revenge against Tigres in the next round, they cannot overlook Calvary. I think CPL team are teams that you shouldn't really underestimate, and I think that's what Orlando City is going to try not to do in these two-legged affair against Calvary. Now, in terms of the first 10 game of the season, they start the season at home against Montreal. It feels like that's something similar, because that's the matchup they face in the home opener just a couple years ago. But then after that, they immediately get into a marquee matchup against Inter Miami on the road before they play against Minnesota at home. Then they got another marquee matchup on the road against Atlanta United. Then they got Austin, New York Red Bulls at home, DC United on the road, Montreal on the road, Toronto at home, and then FC Cincinnati at home, which should also be a marquee matchup. So they're the first 10 game of the schedule. I mean, there are some tough teams, but it's a schedule where it's relatively simple, and that they should get a lot of points out of them. But this is where we get to the post Leeds Cup. And you know how I said about how the Philadelphia Union had a really tough schedule down the stretch? Oh boy, look at Orlando City's schedule, and this is where, yeah, for Orlando City, they better hope that they're in a good position to make the playoffs or even near the top part of the standings by the Post Leagues Cup because this is where it gets. They probably have the toughest schedule out of anybody Post Leagues Cup because right off the bat they have to go on the road to face against Sporting KC, then they have to play at home against Nashville, and then playing at home against New England. Then they got a home game against Charlotte FC, which arguably that is probably the easiest game that they're going to get because after that they have to go on the road against the defending MLS Cup champion, that is the Columbus Crew. Then they have to go on the road against FC Dallas. And as I mentioned with FC Dallas today, I think this is going to be a really good team out of the West and could be a contender in the West, especially they made a big statement of getting Peter Musa just today. And then they have to play against the Philadelphia Union at home. And then they have to go on a road to face against FC Cincinnati. And for their decision day game, again, there's just something about these decision day game where it seemed like the schedule maker always tends to want to make the big narrative as the final match of the season, and they will get that when they do face against Atlanta United on decision day. So yeah, like I said, that is a brutal schedule to finish Post Leagues Cup, and really the only winnable game I can say out of that is probably Charlotte FC and maybe Nashville, depending on how Nashville does this season and the question mark that they still have. But yeah, like I said, that is a really tough schedule, and we'll see how Orlando will deal with it as the season goes along. Now, obviously, the strength of this team is going to be the midfield and the defense. I mean, their midfield is pretty stacked, and the same goes with their defense. Even though they lost Antonio Carlos, they've already found a replacement, and Pedro Gallese is still considered one of the top 10 goalkeeper in this league. But the weakness of this team, I think it's still going to be on the attack. And while the attack definitely clicked last season as the season ends, this was always been a problem for Orlando City for the past couple of years. Really, ever since Oscar Pereira, after that incredible 2020 season he had with this Orlando City team playing that fun style of soccer, that I haven't been replicated until what we saw in the second half of last season. And that I think, obviously, when you look at the bigger weakness of this team, if Duncan McGuire does leave, that number 9 position will instantly be a weakness because, again, it's going to be really hard to try to replace the quality that Duncan McGuire has had. And then, of course, the number 10 position, there is still a big question mark of who is going to be the number 10. I've heard that they potentially maybe will slide Ojeda into that number 10 position, but, there's a big question mark in terms of that because I don't think he played in that spot a lot last season. And as I already mentioned, I don't think Nico Ladero should be a regular starter, and that if he is a regular starter, there's definitely some big question of why didn't they just keep Maurizio Pereira in the first place. So that's still a big question, and with the way that they have a DP spot open, I'm a little surprised that they haven't really spent on that number 10 position. Though that being said, it feels like maybe they might have to spend either on their number 9 and number 10 or number 10 position because, if Duncan McGuire does leave, they might be looking into another number 9. Now, in terms of expectation, obviously the expectation is to go deeper into the playoffs, get past the dreaded second round, and maybe even beat Tigres in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. But again, that kind of expectation will depend on the Duncan McGuire situation, and I know that's usually one guy shouldn't change the projectile of the team, but when you look at the quality that Duncan McGuire provided this team, especially on the attack last year, I mean there were times where he was the only goal scorer for this team. That's going to lower all the ceiling for Orlando City if they do decide to sell him and they don't have a good replacement for him heading into this upcoming season. So yeah, the expectation can really vary as the season goes along, and this might be the same case as I'll talk about a lot of team, and especially with the way that how the East is just so strong this year. You need to bring your A game and you need to have your best player available, especially once playoff time comes. And with the way that they lost some key pieces this all off season, and they haven't really replaced them with these key pieces that they lost, I think that's where the expectation. Unfortunately, you got to lower it for Orlando City. I don't think they might have enough to compete against some of these better team in the Eastern Conference that are definitely looking to trying to go deep and are in MLS Cup or bust kind of territory to go deep into the playoffs. But Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video? And if you're an Orlando City fan, do you think that's kind of a correct assumption? And also, what do you think is the strength, weakness, as expectation for this team? But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys hit the like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.